Welcome back to my mental health and crime channel. This is for speculation purpose only and for educational purpose. This picture is from Banfield, and I just had a question. Pay attention to where the steps are. That is the steps that lead to Kaylee and Maddie's room. And now pay attention to where this door is on the right-hand side. I believe that is the door that Dylan kept on opening and closing 3 times actually. DM said that she saw a man with a mask coming down the steps and leaving towards the sliding door. My question is, the steps would have definitely made noise if somebody was going up or down. It's made of wood. And even if she didn't see him climbing up the steps and coming down, she actually said in the affidavit that the person passed by her and walked through the sliding door in the kitchen. I find this to be really strange and a red flag. This door is too close to the steps, and if anyone passed by the door and the door was open and they were peeping out, I'm sure the person would have seen them.
Evidence in the Idaho murder case suggests that Maddie Mogen, not Kaylee Gonzalez, was Brian Kohberger's alleged target. Several long-held questions about the quadruple homicide were answered this weekend when some of the victims' families sat down with 48 hours. Who was killed first? Was there a connection to the killer? What happened the morning the bodies were found? It has always been my assumption that the perpetrator went to 1122 King Road on November 13th with the goal of killing one person, most likely Kaylee or Maddie. Based on all the evidence currently out there, I always lean more towards Kaylee, but now I am not so sure. Kaylee's own family is revealing never-before-heard details about the crime scene and the alleged killer that points directly to Maddie Mogen as the target. Kaylee's parents and her sister Olivia have been outspoken advocates for their daughter and the 3 victims since day one. So outspoken at times that members of the public have criticized them for getting in the way of the investigation. But from the moment a deputy showed up on their doorstep at 4 p.m. on November 13th to tell them that Kaylee was murdered, the Gonzalez family mobilized to help find her killer. And one of the things they did early on was speak to the coroner, who gave them details that up until this point I had never heard, details about the crime scene. Now, I'm sure you're wondering how this was all able to happen with the current gag order in place. The gag order covers the attorneys and the investigators, but it doesn't prohibit families from speaking out. The coroner is covered by this gag order, but the Gonzalez family spoke to Coroner Kathy Mabbitt prior to it being put in place by the judge. Now, from the onset of the investigation, police were firm in their opinion that the crime was targeted, but they never said who the target was.
The bed was up against the wall. The headboard was touching the wall, and the left side of the bed was touching the wall. And we believe that Maddie was on the outside and Kaylee was on the inside.
According to Coroner Mabbitt, the killer's first victim was Maddie, says Steve. And then from Maddie, he moved on to your daughter.
This is huge. Up to this point, investigators have never confirmed the order of the killings. If what the Gonzalez's claim the coroner told them is true, and it was Maddie, we might have our biggest clue yet about the intended target, which may lead us to motive. We have known for a while that the murders started on the 3rd floor with Kaylee and Maddie. Surviving roommate Dylan said she woke up around 4 a.m. to what sounded like Kaylee playing with her dog on the 3rd floor, followed by one of the girls upstairs saying someone's here. At this point, we know Xana was still alive on the 2nd floor, having gotten a DoorDash around that time, plus she was active on TikTok at 4:13 a.m. when Kaylee and Maddie were likely being stabbed to death a floor above. By all accounts, it seems that the killer silently slipped into the house from that back sliding glass door and made a beeline for the bedrooms on the 3rd floor, indicating that he expected his primary target to be there that night. Kaylee and Maddie were up there, sleeping in the same bed. Even though Kaylee lived in the house, she had actually moved out already because she was graduating. She was just there visiting for the weekend. So let's imagine this, the way Kaylee's mom describes it. One side of Maddie's bed was up against the wall, with Maddie sleeping on the outside, putting Kaylee between her and the wall. Now, in this configuration, Maddie would have been the first person that the killer had access to upon entering the room, and he would have needed to lean or climb over her in order to get to Kaylee. Now, the Gonsalveses said that they uncovered evidence that Kaylee had tried to get out of the situation but was trapped. They didn't expand on what that means, but it could mean defensive wound or just kind of how her body was positioned on the mattress. The knife sheath was also dropped to the right of Maddie's body with the killer's DNA on the snap. That always felt to me like this is where the murders began, that the killer snuck in, unsnapped the sheath, and pulled the knife out for the first time, dropping the sheath in the process, effectively marking his start point. Now, the sheath was discovered by investigators on the mattress partially underneath of Maddie's body, so I really do think he dropped it right when he unsheathed the knife for the first time. But does Maddie Mogen being the first victim killed mean that she was the intended target? Not necessarily. It could simply be that the way they were sleeping, she was just the first one the killer got to. But Kaylee's parents revealed more circumstantial evidence pointing directly towards Maddie. When Bryan Kohberger was arrested on December 30th, it was the first time anyone had heard his name, including the families of the victims. Investigators had never tipped their hand that they even had a suspect. But as soon as the Gonsalves family heard the suspect's name, they tried to find him on social media, and they came across this account.
From our investigation of the account, it appeared to be the real Bryan Kohberger account.
The one they claim was the real deal is this one that is one of many that have been floating around Reddit for months. It had one post, 1,943 followers, and was following 99 accounts, some of them, according to the Gonsalveses, were Kohberger's known relatives.
Maddie's Instagram account, and look at her pictures, and he liked them.
This statement made alarm bells go off in my head the second I heard it. Notice she didn't say that the account interacted with Kaylee's photos or Xana's photos, just Maddie's. Sources had previously told People magazine that Kohberger followed all 3 of the female victims on social media, but had repeatedly messaged only one of them. And now I'm wondering if that person was the same one who had photos that he liked. A source also told the outlet that Kohberger's phone contained multiple images of one of the victims. And again, I am wondering if the evidence will show that those photos were of Maddie. Olivia Gonsalves also had access to her sister Kaylee's phone and call logs, which she turned over to the police. So I have to imagine if she went through her sister's phone and found a bunch of unanswered messages from some guy, she would have mentioned it to the police and probably again in this interview. Now, according to authorities, Kohberger showed up repeatedly outside of the victim's home prior to the murders, starting as far back as August 21st when his phone pinged a tower covering the area near 1122 King Road. Logically, if Kohberger was allegedly stalking the house, which is down that random back road, he would have had to have come in contact with the girls before that in order to figure out where they lived. There has been an unsubstantiated rumor flying around for months that the suspect would frequent the Mad Greek restaurant where 2 of the victims worked, Xana and Maddie. Now, the restaurant has denied this, but I've actually eaten there, and I'm positive that the owners wouldn't remember me, so I think it's plausible maybe they just didn't remember him. This is likely the place where he first came across these 2 victims. He's a vegan, they serve vegan food, and there's a limited amount of that in the area. Now, Kohberger was enrolled in nearby Washington State University, not the University of Idaho where the victims went. But one of the victims did have a connection to WSU, and this time it's not Maddie. Xana Kernodle's older sister, Jasmine, was a senior at WSU. Now, like Xana, Jasmine majored in marketing, so it seems unlikely that her undergrad classes would have overlapped with Kohberger's graduate ones, but it's just worth mentioning that they went to the same school. Jasmine and her father also spoke to 48 Hours and divulged new information about the hours after the murders. 911 wasn't called until noon the next day, but along with the police, Jasmine was contacted by Xana's friends. There were multiple people already at the house when 911 was finally called. In addition to the surviving roommates, Bethany and Dylan, police said that several other people were there and that neither of the survivors made the 911 call, though it was made from one of their phones. It's never been explained whether they were there because other roommates had guests in their rooms the night before, which is one possibility. The other, which is a theory that has been floated in Reddit threads, is that Ethan's 2 siblings were called before the police. Now, he was a triplet, and both his brother and sister were students at the University of Idaho. Now, along along with the Chapins, it would make sense to me for some of Ethan's Sigma Chi brothers to have been called because they were just close by. You can actually see the Sigma Chi frat house from 1122 King Road. Why all of these people were at the house before cops were called is a huge mystery, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. And by the time Xana's sister Jasmine got there from Pullman, police had already arrived and closed the crime scene. Now, as we have discussed many times before, the scene was one of the bloodiest ones that police had ever witnessed. With so many people in the house before cops got there, it's pretty shocking that there wasn't blood tracked all over the house or even out here on this cement patio. I don't know what to make of that other than just assuming that the group was either smart enough or unfortunately traumatized enough not to walk into the blood-soaked rooms before cops got there. But as to why the killer didn't leave a blood trail, the Gonsalveses think he had what's called a kill kit.
I think he had a backpack.
Change of clothes. We don't know if it was coveralls, pants, hoodie. We don't know.
This means he would have had minutes, maybe seconds to change out of the clothes he wore into clean ones between the time Dylan heard crying in Xana's room and then seeing the killer walking out of the house. Now, the murder weapon and those bloody clothes have never been found. Search Daily Mail videos on Facebook for more clips.
This clip is from Daily Mail. It was from the beginning of this case. Police said that several other people were there and that neither of the survivors made the 911 call. Jasmine Conodal, Xana's sister, Xana rest in peace, was called before the police. The triplets, the Chapin triplets, were called before the police. Many other people were called before the police, and there were several people there. So like the Daily Mail reporter said, were all these people too smart not to walk over the evidence and blood? Or were they just too traumatized? If they were too traumatized and if there were several people, someone would have definitely walked into the evidence. Why did the 911 call not be made immediately? Why did it take 8 to 9 hours before the call was called? Washington Pullman University isn't such a big campus. I wonder if Jasmine ever ran into Brian Koberger without even knowing who he was. I wonder who called Jasmine before the police were called. This is a massive house. It has 3 floors, so you can imagine how many people walked into evidence before the police got there. We're talking about 6 bedrooms, bathrooms and toilets on each floor, and a big kitchen. We know that when Brian Christopher Koberger was arrested, there were many fake accounts of these that were made in Instagram and social media. How do we know which was the real account? Because the Gonsalves family believed that this is the real account. Was BK actually following Maddie and Kaylee? We've heard plenty of times that Kaylee had a stalker, although the police debunked that. When Kaylee was standing at the grub truck, she was mostly on her phone, texting and receiving texts. She even took pictures of herself, but she was actually taking pictures of the people behind her, I believe, the way she was holding her phone. It was way above her height. What was going on that night? Was this pre-planned? Did something happen that night or the night before? Maddie could have definitely been the target because the knife sheath was lying next to her, allegedly. If it was implanted there. But I believe that Maddie could have been the target, but I believe Kaylee could have been the target too. Since Kaylee complained about a stalker, and she told the manager in the vape shop that she had a stalker. What did Maddie tell Adam? I believe the whole mystery lies there. Please like, share and subscribe. Justice for the Idaho. May they rest in peace.